Oh, there was national TV coverage in Pittsburgh
Okay, for Beaver
for
Run, right?
Beaver Run. It was you and Sage Karam, and they were focusing on the two of you. And then they did snippets for like the Sunday show or something, but it was on national TV. Yeah, it was just a little coverage. You don't remember that?
How do I
See,
not remember this?
I don't
No.
know. I don't know. And then, of course, obviously your experience on the Survivor show
Hmm.
and your evolution into cars, and now you're affiliated some with NASCAR now. I didn't realize that, but Xander was telling me, right? So,
Yeah, full-time employee. Girl's an honest working woman now,
all right, all right,
for better
and
or
so
worse.
yeah, so I guess Xander, I think we're ready to roll when you are. So,
And just
Yeah.
pronunciation of my last name is Landauer, just in case anyone
okay,
needs it.
very good.
Yeah. I actually go back after because I hate the couple of minutes it takes to like get into like a genuine conversation when you do like a generic like cold open. So I go back and like I've been adding those after the fact and then kind of bleeding into a casual
Perfect.
conversation as it is. But um yeah,
So is
I
my
mean,
audio okay and everything's good audio-wise?
Yeah,
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 audio's
for sure.
good. Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, just like what Randy said, the idea I told Randy about the show because for a lot of the podcasts we were doing during the week in between different broadcast events and anything we were covering, if we were having more of an open kind of conversation, we'd kind of covered a lot of the general bases of the sport at that point. And in some cases, I felt like we were, I don't know, a bit of an echo chamber on ideas. And the more I thought about it, I was like, there's no way that for a sport that's been around 70 years and so many different people come through it there hasn't been similar things that have happened or stuff in history that's just been lost. And even it was eye opening for us with like Supernats last year, where we were just trying to make sure that we had every winner, and that was a struggle to go back and thank goodness that David Cole and Rob had kept their archive site up from EKN of some of the original Supernats, and even still going beyond that was like tricky just to make sure that like right now the Super Bowl race had all of the winners listed in our end. No Wikipedia, no other pages, no
Right.
racing reference or nothing, and that goes. That's just scratching the surface. So I hit up Randy, and it also, I've got a lot of young guys and girls working for me. So I was like, well, like it could work to have maybe someone other than another kid to talk on a history show like this. And there's so many cool people that have come through the sport that are still doing things that are huge in motorsport. And, um, people may not have known or had not heard some of the karting stories and deep ends of it. So I guess, yeah, that's kind of the idea. It's a bit of both. It's a bit of what you're doing now, and it's a bit of like reminiscing back on all the karting times and good times. And yeah, I guess the first question I've enjoyed asking everyone so far is the first memory that you can think of, first of racing, and then I guess the second one would kind of be the extension of discovering go-karting or going to the go-kart track.
Yeah, so first memory of go-karting. So my my parents had gotten a kind of like a cage go-kart, like with a lawnmower engine basically, and we took it around a driveway, and I guess like I realized that you could make a tighter radius by getting up the inside wheels up, and so it was just like I was kind of like throwing all my weight to the outside and getting it to come like 4 inches off the ground. And I guess my parents saw that. My dad specifically saw that. And he was like, "She's gonna be a champion. We need to get her some proper training." And like I would drive my brother around in that thing. It was really really cool, and my sister as well. And but then when it came to racing, so I raced go karts for a few years at Oakland Valley Race Park, which was where I started. A really cool track in kind of like upstate-ish New York. And I remember, I know that I won my first race in my seventh race, and I was happy that I got that. And then that became my number. Seven was my number because of that for a long time. Excuse me. And but then I also remember one of my unfortunately earliest go-karting memories was leading the race for the first time. So this was in the first six races, right? Leading the race, and I was starting to think about winning and like how great it would feel, and I could taste it, and it was amazing, and how proud my parents were going to be, and how I was going to celebrate, and how the boys were going to get their ass kicked by me. And then I spun off the track, like completely lost focus, and spun off the track with like 2 laps to go and couldn't get it restarted. And it was like I think my parents were really amused because I was telling them afterwards, like, well, you just taught yourself like the most important lesson, which is to stay focused and not get ahead of yourself and like keep your eye on the prize. And it was one of the most painful racing experiences I think I ever had. There are plenty of other ones after that. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, I just like caught the bug very quickly and loved it and loved everything about being at the track.
Well, so that was race 6. So you must have learned your lesson because you said you won race 7.
I
Right?
did, yeah, sometime in there, and got it together the next one.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
And how much racing did you do at Oakland Valley before you started branching out to other tracks regionally, and then obviously you followed the Manufacturers Cup for a few years and had quite a bit of success?
Yeah, so I think we did 2 full seasons at OVRP, which I wanna say it was like 14 races or 18 races,
Hmm.
somewhere around there. So it was a full family thing, drive up there. It was me and my sister that started racing. I was 10 and she was 8, I think that's right, yeah. And then my brother joined once he turned 5. So it was a big family activity. I think I did some regional racing first, but I believe that I jumped into national racing when I was 12 in the cadet class, just as I was transitioning out to the junior class, at Batavia, New York. That was the first track that
Hmm.
I did on
Yep.
national level. And I think I got a top 10, I want to say. And I was running with the Burrell folks and Sage Karam's family and Paulie Haraka and that whole crew, Corey Lewis. I don't remember who else was there, but
Yeah,
lots of those
that
folks.
was a tough crowd. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of competition there, and obviously drivers that have moved on as you have to bigger and better things. The one of the things I was most impressed with your family was, if I recall, you lived in basically in the greater New York City area, correct?
New York City, yeah.
So even Oakland Valley was a couple hours, I believe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And to travel a national circuit, Batavia was one end of the state to the other, which is still pretty far. But you talk about Charlotte, Daytona, Dousman, Road America, Norway. I mean, those are some serious distances. There was nothing close when it came to the national tour.
Yeah, and I think South Bend,
Yeah, South Bend. Yeah.
which great track with one part of the pit lane being in one time zone and the other one being in the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
Like that, it's wild.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, my parents really, committed and gave a lot, and not just like financially and resource, but time, because they came with us and
Yeah.
they work full time. They still work full time, probably partially due to the racing that they supported. But yeah, and I think it made it easier that the whole family did it, because it wasn't like some kid had to stay back and do something. Because we were all doing it, it was a full effort and endeavor. And it was a lot of fun. And I think me and my brother probably had a little more fun than my sister, and she was a great driver. Like she was probably the smoothest of the three of us, and like technically could drive probably the best, and just didn't love the racing itself as much. She became a D1 athlete for rowing, and my brother and I could not coordinate getting oars in the water at the same time. So whole nother set of skills. But it was a whole, and that was the case for all of racing. Like, and I stayed in school throughout high school, and so was traveling from New York. I remember, jumping ahead a little bit, when I was racing Formula BMW, we had like the Indy F1 weekend, followed by, or no, we must have had like the Canadian F1 weekend, followed by a test day in Indy, followed by the race in Indy, and it was taking place during my finals for my freshman or sophomore year, whatever it was. And like flying back and forth, or I was racing Ford Focus midgets the next year, and they raced on Wednesday nights in Indiana, and my mom flew with me on Tuesdays to go race on Wednesday and fly back, and like she proctored quizzes and stuff. So lots of time, energy, and resource commitment from my parents.
That would have been at the speedrome, I'll bet, right?
For
Where
the
you ran
for
the
So
Focus
that was,
midgets.
yeah, that was at Anderson. That was
Oh,
at
at
Mount
Anderson.
Lawn. Oh yeah, Anderson, Mount Lawn.
Anderson is like a quarter-mile high banked.
Yeah, yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. Well, that was my first Ford Focus midget race. Yeah,
That
but I like
that,
those.
that
I've
would,
always liked those more banked ones more throughout
yeah.
my entire racing career. Yeah, like Bristol is the
Yeah.
most
Well,
fun I've ever had in a stock car.
yeah. Well, that's to even say you raced at Bristol is something,
Pretty
but to
cool.
race in the
Yeah,
stock, yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I had a buddy of mine. He's probably one of my oldest karting friends. He's still I think I don't know if he's got anything lined up for Xfinity this year, but Andre Castro is another buddy of mine who went to U
Oh, yeah.
Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And grew up in New York City. And I know one of the
We went to
things
the
that's
same high
always,
school.
yeah,
Yeah.
Stuyvesant.
Mhm.
And he especially when we were younger too, like where some of my other friends would be able to, just easily find their way into coaching gigs and do kind of the community in between having rides or having a race, right? Andre was tougher because he lived in New York City, and his parents even too, when they would go to race OVRP, they'd have to rent a car or they would take the train down to Englishtown. So as you're, especially with everything that you've been able to get behind the wheel of, how would you say it was more difficult and by growing up in New York City? And at what point, was it almost like a barrier? Was it a barrier at all by not being, let's say, near a mid Ohio or near, like now there's so many Porsche experience centers. A couple of my friends are able to like work there and in between lining things up. And it just kind of keeps your name relevant, right? You're still around a racetrack. You're still able to talk to people. And the proximity factor is so key, right? In
Yeah.
being at the right place, the right time with people. So was that?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good question. And I hadn't thought about it from the working perspective or doing stuff because I lived in New York until I was 18, and so I was on the younger end while I was balancing traveling from New York. And it probably had some impact in not being like deeply embedded in the culture, but it also was a differentiating factor that was cool from a marketing perspective or from
Mm.
being able to blend worlds. It probably didn't work out as much as I would have hoped it would, but I I think I think had my parents not been able to afford to pay for us to fly everywhere, it would have been a bigger barrier, but I was really lucky that they were able to support through those teenage years and everything, and so, um, it helped, but I don't know, there's so much it's so hard to, like, look back on that because there are so many valuable things I got from being in New York from, like, a personal development standpoint or from a toughness or from a exposure to business in other areas and how that worked and, like, the intensity and the kind of the hardest time problem that I have living in Charlotte from an energy standpoint is like it's just it doesn't feel as intense as New York, and I'm
Not
so and
busy.
now that I'm not like at the racetrack regularly, like I am missing that really intense environment. And so I think that while there could have been some hindrances with being in New York, there are also so many positives. And whether or not that impacts my racing, I don't know, but wouldn't change it for anything.
Looping back to karting for a second, if I said to you, what's your greatest takeaway? What's your greatest memory of your karting days? What would it be?
Oh wow.
And maybe in general, like what you learned from it, and also an
Mhm.
event in itself. Just one specific moment where you said, "Man, I'll never forget that."
Yeah, so one specific event, it was an HPV race in Newcastle in the junior,
Okay.
HPV junior, and I was very good at that class. Wasn't as good as the Yamaha can, but the HPV junior I was really good at. And there was one race where I just got in the lead, and it was the most potent and intense feeling of being in the zone where it's like you're not really paying it. You're so focused and tuned in, but like I felt like I was having this fever dream of being at the track. I wasn't actively thinking about what my pedals were doing, what my steering was doing. It just flowed so well.
It was instinctive. Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like the most intoxicating feeling ever because you're almost like this superhuman ability and you're just operating flawlessly and then you go and win and it's like this is the coolest thing ever. This is so
Was that
cool.
was that the first time you'd led at a manufacturer's
I
cup?
don't think so. I don't think so, but I think it was one
No, but I
that
know exactly what she's talking
is like the
about
most
because drivers
effortless.
talk about it. There's like only a couple times in your career where you
Yeah.
you look back and you were in the flow state. And it's
Yeah,
like so
exactly.
hard to describe, but yeah, I have like one race weekend in particular where like I look back on it and there were so many other ones where you had times on track where you were thinking or overthinking or whatever, and then when you were in the flow state that it was just happening, right? You were
And
just doing
yeah.
everything. You're almost a passenger in your own mind. It was
Exactly. That's a great way
yeah.
to describe it, like a passenger for it. And like I and maybe it was just that was the first time that I experienced that, but I don't feel like I felt that as strongly at any time since then. So that was one specific event that just was like the coolest thing ever. And then in terms of takeaway, I really always loved the collaborative nature of go-karting and the team. I mean, it's racing in general, but the team element. And I think especially being like a young girl and a teenage girl in go-karting and seeing just how much bias there was in so much of the pits, and then having Glenn Butler and my core team and like Mike Doty and all these folks that just really believed in me and saw that talent. I think it goes to show how important it is, like when you are working hard and being your authentic self and being a good team player that's uniting your team, you get those folks to work with you. And I think it's a hardy lesson to learn as a teenager, but it was really important because I knew that I was having so much trouble getting respect from so many people, and so it required, with the help of my parents, some like really proactive work. And then when you get it, it's so cool. And then when the team is proud and the team is happy, like knowing that that's so important for overall team performance was a really incredible lesson to learn early on.
When you moved up the ladder in motorsports into open wheel, into the midgets, formerly BMW, and then into stock cars, did you kind of face those same challenges of being, you know, one of the few females in the field and dealing with that?
It was really hit or miss. Like it really depended on the team. It depended on who we were working with. I think I had a great time getting into stock cars because it happened to be like I'd done Legends cars, and that's when I'd moved to North Carolina a little bit, and or had spent summers here, and so it was starting to Xander, to your point, like build my reputation with the community and integrate with the community. And I had interned at a NASCAR team one summer in college, and but I raced with Lee Pulliam for my limited late models in 2015, which was kind of my first full time in stock cars. And I always describe Lee as like the best ally you could ask for, in the sense that he knew that he had great equipment and he knew that he had great people, and he just expected you to be able to win if you were driving his equipment. And just having that expectation that I would be competitive was such a luxury, because when your team underestimates you or the people around you underestimate you, like you can feel that, and then you have to like put in extra work to earn their respect and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that, and then I won a championship, and it's like, okay, cool. Like I've just proven that I can be taken seriously. And then like jumped to K&N with Bill McNally and all that stuff. So I was able to, I think, have a pretty good experience there. And then I was also in my 20s when I did that. So luckily, as you get older, you tolerate a lot less BS, and you kind of learn who you are, and there's no right way to be a woman in a male dominated space. And like everyone's got to do whatever they're comfortable with, and what I was comfortable with, I think, worked well for my personality and for the teams that I was working with.
That's so funny you mentioned that about Lee. Like just the way you describe it in such a positive way, right? Because I feel like for most guy drivers, right, to go into an environment where the expectation is to win from getting out the gate from day one would almost be feared or be looked at as a negative, that pressure, right? Or that expectation. But for you to be talking about it in such a positive way, to be like, for once, they weren't just thinking I was just the girl on the team,
It's
or
going
I
to be
was
the
not
back
going to be.
marker. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you weren't, he was just like, nope. Yeah. You're going to my car. You're going to win. We're expecting to roll up and win. It doesn't matter. Right. And for you to finally have that, appreciating that, versus someone else coming in and going, nerves up almost to perform, because they're like, oh, so-and-so won last year in this car. They're looking at it as it's pressure. And here you are, you're like, finally, I'm not having to overcome and just get to the starting line with these guys for them to just look at me as just a driver.
Yeah.
Lee's stuff's so good. He's just looking at you and you're like, okay, yeah. Like,
well, that's an interesting perspective
yeah.
from your side also, because I hadn't thought about that, like the pressure and the more anxiety induced feelings. But you're right. I mean, and to be clear, like I was very anxious and there was a lot of pressure.
I'm sure.
But to be taken seriously as a racer, it's kind of like this reinforcement that you deserve to be there, that the team will be trying hard, because that's a big fear, right? With anyone climbing and racing, whether it's go-karting, cars, like if you're paying this team to race and like you're investing this time and energy, like there are plenty of teams where they take your money and they give you shitty equipment, and then you're just having to deal with it. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse here. I have my
No,
truck
no,
now,
you're good because
so-
you're 100% right. Like,
yeah, and so
yeah.
like that's a big fear. And so then to also know that you're really getting what you're paying for and what you're spending all this time and energy on is obviously comforting.
Yeah.
Learning everything you learned in karting from a driving technique, how much of that were you able to apply when you got into bigger cars and into stock cars?
I think things like smoothness behind the wheel and just like really smooth steering input was really important. I will be the first to admit that like my seat of the pants feel has never been super strong. Like I have gotten good by listening to feedback, looking at data. I don't inherently just feel where the limit is. And I think that is a bit of a limiting factor. I could always get there, it just took a little longer. But I think by nature of driving so many different things, from basically the beginning, because I got into cars when I was 13. So I was still like, I was in like my prime go-karting days when I was starting to race cars. And I remember I got into the skip barber car for the first time, and I got on the straightaway and I tried to jump out of my seat to like lift the weight off the rear axle so it get the wheel spinning like you do in a go-kart. And it didn't work. And so I think I learned how to adapt to whatever the car was and whatever it needed. And sometimes it could be a little overwhelming, a little chaotic in my brain, but learning to adapt and I guess feel what you need to do to drive was always helpful.
Is there one or maybe a couple of kind of turning points when you look at the journey all the way through your driving career where it got to another level of seriousness, you know, from your perspective or your mindset? I guess, you know, you're like, okay, I'm really going to go a little bit deeper. I think some people, you know, the seriousness is more of like gradual because their parents maybe were so involved and they were so involved. It's almost like they didn't even notice how serious things were developing. And then for others, it was fun. And then it's okay. Yeah, no, I should have taken this seriously maybe about 2 years ago, but I'm all in now. You know, when you look back,
Yeah.
is there any moments like that?
I was pretty serious right off the bat.
Yeah.
I think because it's an expensive sport. It's a time consuming sport. My parents every year ask like, do you still want to do this? Like, we'll support you, but if you don't want to 100%, like, we're not going to. And I remember like my last year in cadet, so when I was 12, as being the year where I was like, I just want to do this all the time. Like, especially in middle school, I was really miserable at the end of elementary school and middle school, like Mean Girls, New York City school, like Gossip Girl was rooted in some truth, right? And so the racetrack was my outlet in a sense. I felt like I really belonged at the racetrack. I loved the friends that I had made at the racetrack, and I loved how proud of myself I felt when I was at the track. So it was really a place where I just really wanted to be, and I knew that you could be a famous superstar race car driver and, you know, make your living going racing. Never got there, but that's okay. And so I think, but by then, and then my parents held me to that standard of you will work hard. And so I pretty much always did, with some balance. Obviously stayed in school, but missed plenty of birthday parties, didn't miss prom. I did get to go to prom, but I wouldn't have had there been a race, right? So I was full in pretty early.
How hard was it when you had to stop?
Oh, Randy, I'm happy because I can say like after a year and a half of like going through incredible grieving, I feel good and excited for my future, but it was so hard. And the thing was it's a couple different things. One, like when you have your one pillar that really is your identifier, race car driver, that's always what set me apart. That's what I put in my college application. That's how I introduce myself. You know, it's everything. Having to like kind of figure out what your other identities are is really challenging. Recognizing that the dream's not going to happen is really, really hard. And like, I probably was naive and in denial, but until I was like 29, 30, I was fully convinced I was still going to make it. And it took like losing, and this was like, I ran 2 Xfinity races with like a mid-tier team, right? Like, I was like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. This is the break. And then a sponsor for like 5 or 6 races fell out at the last minute. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin. But it was really hard. And I was really bitter for a long time. And I was really sad. And Like I've known I've had all this other stuff that I can lean on and go to, but like what was gonna bring that same amount of joy and excitement and satisfaction, I wasn't sure. And what was as intense, like it's really addicting to be in that kind of intense environment, and to pursue something so, I say one dimensionally in a good way, but like to pursue like everything you do is with the purpose of it applying to your racing. And so there's so much purpose in your life and what you're doing, and everything makes sense if you're directing it for this one goal. So shifting away from that was challenging in addition to sad. And then my ego was in it a lot too. And like my ego was bruised that I didn't make it. And and I think it's really cool to be at NASCAR and to be working at NASCAR, but in some ways I think it made it harder because I couldn't just rip the Band-Aid off and like bury my head in the sand and move away and like, like all this stuff. And so
Yeah.
it's like you have to, it's in my face every day, all these other drivers that get to keep racing or who get to announce their season. And it's like I'm so happy that there are so many more women in racing now. And I'm also just like so sad that I'm not one of them and like was like too early for the boom of women in sports. But now, as I said, although that was very impassioned, I can see all the other cool stuff that the future has. And it's just about reframing and, getting out of your own head.
I think you're always going to feel that way, but you found a way to transition and be proud and positive of what you're doing. And not everybody can do that. There are people that you just, they cling to something and too long, and you see it. I'm not going to name names. You see it out there with drivers. If I can do it. I just got to put this together, that together. You've already missed the curve. It's over, but it's hard to give up. And as you said, you kind of had to rip the Band-Aid, so to speak. But at one point in time, you had to say, okay, it's time to move on. And you obviously have made that transition very successfully, but not everybody can say that.
Thank you. That's I really appreciate that. And I think part of that also, like knowing when to move on is really hard. Cause to your point, like your ego can overcompensate, your optimism can overcompensate. I think for me, what made it a little easier was that I was getting really tired of being on like mediocre equipment, and I hadn't won in a long time. So like 2020, I raced in the Euro NASCAR series and raced for Anthony Coupin and PK Carsport, like best team over there, won a lot of championships. And that was really cool. And we were competitive and I was up front and it was great. And then all of the racing since then was what I could afford, which was mid-level. And it's just like, this is not fun anymore to do this. And then also as a woman who was 30, 31, who one day hoped to have a family, not right now. It's too much right now. But like, that was a very real consideration. It's like, okay, well, I could keep pursuing the dream for a long time, but is that fair to me personally? Is it fair to my relationship with my husband and our financial security, like visions that we have? Because like no matter what, you're going to probably stop racing by the time you're in your 40s if you're like the most successful, and then hopefully you still have over half your life left. And so it's like, was what I was doing right now and serving this purpose of trying to pursue this dream, would that kind of screw over future Julia and future Ben and all that stuff? And so that's, talk about trying to be an adult. Like that's a mature conversation to have with yourself.
Exactly.
And a challenging one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you went to Europe?
So I was 20. It was 2020. So I was 29.
29. And how much experience had you had in Europe, just traveling and knowing the area? And none?
No. I had plenty. My parents.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Luckily, my parents had taken us to Europe a handful of times growing up. I had visited friends who were studying abroad, and my husband's French, so we met at the end of 2018. So I am now well versed in French culture, and so I actually lived. Yeah, I lived with his family actually in France during COVID, and he couldn't leave because he was on a visa.
Goodness.
So for 3 months, September to December, I was with his family. They only speak French. Luckily, he had asked me the year before to start learning French so that I could communicate with them. And then he had Thanksgiving with my family without me. And this was like a year and something into dating, or maybe 2 years into dating. So yeah, it was a challenge. A good challenge to have. But
and you raced for one season in Europe?
One season, and unfortunately it was during COVID, so it was a condensed season. So we got 10 races instead of 14. raced at 4 tracks instead of the 7 that we were supposed to. So it was a little bit, I mean, minimal
Yeah.
problems to have in the grand scheme of COVID, but was unfortunate because there's also no fans in
Right.
the stands. There's not like the whole experience
Right.
wasn't really there.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, and I know we want to talk to you about NASCAR, but you got to tell us the Survivor story.
They just announced the 50th anniversary, or the 50th season cast, which is all returning players, and I did not get an invite back, so oh well. But no, I applied when I was in college and got on, and I was the youngest person there. It was so hard. It's very authentic. It wouldn't make it this many. It's been on the air for 25 years. Like it wouldn't do that if it wasn't authentic. The people are nuts that are on it, and I
Wait,
don't
you were
watch
on it. You were on it.
I
Julia.
know, but I didn't make it that far, so clearly not nuts enough to be on it. No, I made it about halfway, but talk about competitive. My season was half returning players who had played already and half new players, and I was one of the new players, and that's so unfair. That's like a Hendrick going against a Rick Ware. I mean, like
right.
so unfair, and I'm always bitter about that. It's like, why couldn't I have a fair chance at Survivor? Anyway, and so that was tough, but it also just like it's so overwhelming. It was the first time I couldn't trust anybody. It was the first time they were just like so physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually deprived. Got really sunburnt, like which was miserable. And yeah, it's the strategy part is so cool, and I probably didn't do a good enough job in like thinking about that because I was so overwhelmed. But it's really cool. It's a cool club to be part of. It's cool to like watch seasons. I watch them on Netflix when they come out, and I'm always torn. I'm like, oh my God, I want to go back on so I can prove that I can do it better and I can be more strategic and I can be more conniving. And then I see how conniving and backstabbing and deceptive you have to be. And I'm like, I think I'm too nice. I'm not sure that like, I like to see the best in people. I like to build relationships. I like to trust people. And you need that, but you also need to be okay completely stabbing someone in the back. And I haven't quite gotten there yet.
No,
when you applied to get on there, was it like just shot in the dark? Had you been consistently applying season after season? Was it just like, this seems cool? Or
it was a conversation that had happened with some friends and talking about like, oh, it's so like the women who go on there are so badass. And I was like, I'm a badass woman. Like, what if I like amplify that? Like, this could be a cool challenge. Like, let's try this. And so it was kind of, I had seen it, like I had seen the show, I was aware of it, but I wasn't a super fan in that same capacity, but I wanted to apply and I wanted to see, and I love a challenge, and it was a challenge.
When's the last time you've been to a karting event?
Ooh, that's a great question. I've seen some karting events in the Charlotte Motor Speedway area, but it's been
a while, huh?
It's been a long time. I've seen some stuff up at Mosport when I was racing cars there. They had some go-karting stuff going on, but it's been too long.
Yeah. Well, you're not far from Mooresville.
No. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I've done GoPro. I've gone or now Trackhouse Motorplex. Like I've gone there a lot. Teaching my husband how to drive go-karts. He got within a second of me. I was really proud of him.
So I didn't quite catch. Is there still hope that you're going to have a family, or there's not going to be?
Oh yeah, someday. But you know what? See, in New York, women are a lot older typically when they have their kids. So that's my benchmark. Right. So although I'm 33, I'm like, I'm still young.
Well, here's the obvious question: will your kids be go-karters?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I think there are so many benefits. To go-karting, to the craft, to the responsibility, to the mechanical background. But I also know that it's really hard if you don't have a trust fund and it's really hard to do it financially. And so I'm like, well, I don't currently. Won't be able to give any potential future kids one as of right now. Things could change. And like, do I want to open them up to like discovering something that they really love that I can't support all the way? And I don't know, like maybe that'll change. But there are so many benefits to racing and go-karting. And I think like, especially if I have little girls, like I want them to jump in there and like learn all the same things that I learned, because I think it was
Right.
really valuable. So we'll see. We'll see.
One of the things I'm fascinated with over the years, with my history in karting, and see some of the kids like you that have come up through karting and where they are now. And so many of them are good enough, more superior to those that are currently in the seats, but didn't have the resources and the opportunities.
Yeah.
But so many like yourself have been able to find their place within motorsports and make a difference. And I think of Chris Gabehart, for example, what he's done. And he was he was a great late model racer, but at some point, and like you, he kept his college career going concurrent with his racing career, and look where he is now, running one of the top teams in NASCAR. So, and there's so many stories like that, but I'd love to hear about your NASCAR experiences now. I mean, obviously you've settled into that, and obviously there's a lot of excitement there, I'm sure, in what you're doing.
Yeah, you bet. And to go back to your point a little bit, I think that that's something that I hope a lot of the media coverage around racing, whether it's Drive to Survive or Full Speed with NASCAR, F1 Academy, I know they have their show out now, like showing the other elements of motorsports. Because like, and even if you think of it from me, like personally, as a like getting more women into the sport, like we always talk about the drivers, or like that's the career, but then you think about all the other areas where you need people to make an impact. And so whether that's crew chiefing, mechanics, pit crews, strategists for team, the aerodynamicists, the people at the fabricators, the OEMs, like there's just so many elements. And like one of the really cool things about being at NASCAR was also seeing how many women were in the R&D center and on the engineering side, for all the safety stuff, for the aerodynamic engineering, and it's really fun to see. And then to see all the storytelling and the content and brand building and everything there. And so for me, at NASCAR now, I'm on the strategy team, and it kind of is a mix of plugging into projects that other departments are working on, helping leadership with their initiatives. But then I also go to the R&D center every Tuesday, and I'm in and kind of serving as connective tissue between our competition group and some of the other business units. And so I'm able to take my wealth of racing knowledge and be a new perspective on that. So it's really cool, and it's cool to, like, especially with all that's going on, it's really interesting to be on the other side and see how people are dealing with it. And yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Some days are more exciting than others. It's much more relaxed than pursuing a racing career. And it's different to be in a corporate setting versus a freelancer entrepreneur. It's like always hustling, always trying to do more. So it's an adjustment, but it's really cool. And you've got a lot of really passionate racing folks who are trying to make the sport the best that it can be. And that's really cool.
Another thing that I'm fascinated by with you is I noticed in your bio that you're also are a keynote speaker, and you're a tremendous public speaker.
Thank
But
you.
that's something, because of my job in WK, I had to do, and I had to do it as effectively as I could, because that was a lot of what my job was to communicate. But how did you evolve to that, and talk about the confidence you had to gain getting in front of large audiences and communicating that message with confidence of what you wanted to say?
Yeah, great question. So that one, I'm going to be honest, it kind of fell into my lap a little bit, because throughout college, I had always volunteered to speak at girls' science camps, specifically to continue to inspire and motivate, teenagers and younger girls to pursue the STEM stuff that they loved, because I loved it and I wanted to support. And then my senior year at Stanford, they had a TEDx event. So they put on a TEDx every year. And so they had asked me if I would give a TEDx talk. And so I got to work with a communications coach that they had hired. And we've kind of created the story around my own personal racing stories. All of them were go-karting stories that I told, but it was around like, can nice girls win, and like addressing stereotypes that women face. And I like incorporating humor into my conversations with people. And so I gave this, 8-minute talk, and the audience laughed at several different points. And let me tell you, it is so damn satisfying to have a large group of people laugh at what you say, like in a good way, right? Like,
Yep.
and it was like, oh my, this is an amazing feeling. I get why stand-up comics put all that work in to get on stage. And I knew that it could be a career. And so my parents had offered to support me for 2 years out of college. And I knew that I had to make my own living after that. And I knew that with keynote speaking, I could work up my fee so that it could be a full income, and then I could have a ton of free time to continue pursuing racing. So luckily that plan worked out, and it's been fun to evolve the storytelling. In terms of confidence, I get a lot of adrenaline from getting on stage. So I think people kind of fall in two buckets. Either they are really terrified to get on stage and it's something you have to work on, which is not a bad thing. Like you sometimes just have to, or it really revs your engine, for lack of a better pun, and you get a lot of energy from it. And so I was in that category, but it's been really fun to learn how to craft stories in a way that's set for the stage. So if people are sitting for 45 minutes, how are you going to keep them engaged with different storytelling, different tones that you use, a different pace that you speak. And now that I'm working in corporate, I'm able to incorporate a lot more like real tangible experiences that other people in corporate who are in the audience would be able to relate to, which I was doing well when it was just my racing experience. But again, now being able to bring in this first person experience of being in a corporate environment makes it a lot richer, and I can have more of an appreciation for what my audiences are going through.
Sure. One of the things that Xander's done with Kart Chaser is he's put a lot of young kart drivers in front of a mic, live streamed to quite a few people. And I think over time, Xander, I've seen it, drivers are much more comfortable and can deliver a much better message than uhs and ums and not knowing really what to say, but having enough of a comfort zone to get out there and talk about their race and their sponsors and, what they need to do in the next heat or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much of the same, right? I tell all of our guys and girls we work with now that I don't need you to be any different, right? I just need to show who you are, and the audience will decide whether they like you or they don't. And we just want them to, find someone that they want to root for, or root against, because that's the nature of sports entertainment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny again, like for Andre, for myself, for a bunch of our buddies. I mean, the whole motivation behind it is no different than the frustration that you've probably felt the last few years, and then the last year and a half. And what set me down our kind of hopeful goal is to eventually build a tier of karting that sits in a similar light to like high limit to NASCAR, or the Larson and Sweet's high limit series to NASCAR, right? Where it's an amazing landing pad. It's also a hell of a trampoline, better than what exists currently, because it's a landing pad, because you have people that are able to stay there with opportunities. And I think because of no different than what Supercross did for Moto over the last 40 years of exposure and bike sales on Monday because of wins on Sunday, and you still have all the manufacturers right now putting in what they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think that if we were a little smarter about what we could do with the cost per weekend and the exposure for winning and paying that off increases, that these guys are going to double down, because already we're starting to see more of it. It's cool to even just in the modern age having all the major US races covered really nicely between us and EKN and everything else. The coaching inquiries these kids are getting at 15, 16, 17 years old are astronomical. The idea of even just 5 years ago or 10 years ago that, a kid that won, would have been at that time, I guess, Yamaha senior, just past the HPV era,
Mm-hmm.
getting 5 different message requests or emails to go to wherever in the US and to go get paid to coach someone else.
That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
It is cool. So it's kind of getting it more and more to where these kids are having these kind of semi-professional careers. Right. But it's all the same. It's all about educating them on why that stuff makes sense, why it's important. And even in our small scale, which is totally different right now than, let's say, in car racing, but that coaching angle of it all and how participant driven the sport is currently, that you don't need a million views. You don't even need 1,000. One viewer could be one client or one sponsor. And so even as humbling as it would be to be constantly putting stuff out or putting your face out there or taking it seriously in front of an audience of 10, one of those 10 audience members might be the person that all of a sudden gives you the budget or the income that you need to continue to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And educating them on that and trying to coach them all. And for sure, like having some of the ones come up, some of them just have it naturally, right? Like Connor Zilish did from day one. He's
got that X factor. Yeah.
Yeah, he always did. And it was fun for our guys, because to have a 14-year-old and then 15 senior, and even when he was in junior, to be that energetic and so into the camera. I look back at some of the pictures from the year that he ran senior, right before he was able to fully move in with the Mazda money. How in depth even that year, he'd come up to us and be like, "Man, you guys' interviews are boring here today. Give me the camera and let me go around and bother everybody." And he did that. And then there was a weekend where the tire situation was not great, and he got called to the steward's office that day for asking. He went to one of the racetracks. He's like, "So what's wrong with my tires?" And Chuck Yoder was like, "Well, I think it's your driving." And,
put in his place.
Connor got called in for talking about it. Yeah, listen, hey, this may not be the best, but why'd you go say that on the mic? Oh, well, I thought it was funny. So
yeah,
but he was awesome. But there's other kids too, where you watch videos back from where we were, and even for us, when we started doing this, in 2020, it was just videos. In 21, we did our first live feed, and then after that, it's been full on, and it was videos before then. But in the first iterations of it all, everyone was down to do every media request, right? There was never a no for any, no matter how stupid, from lip syncing a TikTok to anything. And now we've almost set it to like a normal level, I think, of media, or close to it, to at least there's enough that like I have to tell my people to be a little more forceful to get the drivers to go and do certain things now, that I'm sure is the same and no different from anyone on any race team, social media management side, or media,
I'm sure it only gets
PR
tougher
manager.
as you go up.
Yeah. But from where you sit now, I wanted to kind of go back a little of how both parallel and yet almost polar opposite your career story and NASCAR story, now that you're working on NASCAR story and less on your driving career story, right? This was something that I was telling Randy right before we went on. NASCAR has the massive boom and the perfect storm, right? Through the 90s to the 2000s, IndyCar and kart split. You get Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt. You ride that, and then the wave is just tremendous through the 2000s and 2010s. It hasn't gone away, but that bubble period that now F1's experiencing is slightly past. And so, now having, for example, just Sunday night, right? Moving the Coke 600 to be on Prime in the summer and streaming, trying to, okay, we're not like all of a sudden at a crater, right? We're past a little bit of a boom, trying to somewhat reinvent to continue to move the trend back upwards, but also not alienate, who is still here from this new height that we've reached. So in comparison to your driving career that was kind of always on the up, looking to go, hadn't had, probably from your perspective, you hadn't ever hit that peak, right? Because you never got the chance to put it on display. And here's NASCAR. Now you're working on the media, the marketing, the looking forward, just past it, looking to almost get it again in a different way, right? Is that I don't know if that crosses your mind or if you've looked at it that way, but I'm sure over the last year and a half and the last probably the last 6 months to a year where you've really been in working with them in the marketing department, you've been looking at racing a little different, I would think. That's
a really loaded question. I'm glad you asked it. And so I think, I'm not personally on the marketing side, but I think in general, what we're working towards as a sport is like, how are we delivering the best product of racing, which NASCAR is incredibly cool racing. It's niche. It shouldn't try to be Formula One. It shouldn't try to be IndyCar. Like everyone should like kind of do what's authentic to them. And I think remembering that is really important. But then also, how do we tell the story properly? We have this, incredibly huge media rights deal that just came out last year or this past year. And you're seeing the different styles of storytelling across the different broadcasters. And like this first one on Amazon Prime was amazing. Like it was so cool. It was fun to hear the broadcasters, the storytelling, the visuals. I mean, so I think it's really about effectively telling the story. And to your point, it's a tough balance to remain relevant to the diehard fans who have been here since the 70s and 80s and have their style of NASCAR that they like best, but then also being relevant to a whole new generation of potential race fans, where maybe it's the racing, maybe it's the storytelling, maybe it's the engineering and the tech side. Like, you just don't know. And it's hard. It's really hard. And part of it's like culturally what's hot in any given moment. But I'm really excited, at least the conversations that I'm involved in some of the changes we might be looking to make, the things that we really want to dive into that have been established for the next few years. It's really cool. And I think there's a fresh perspective of trying to tackle this and make it as great of a sport as we can. And you're talking about everything on the grassroots level and karting level, and so much of what leads into the NASCAR races on Sundays are all of the regional races and the local races that are going
Right.
on. And whether that's short track racing, midgets, bandoleros, like whatever it is, or go-karting. We're seeing more and more go-karters who get into NASCAR as well. Like, that whole ecosystem is really important and shouldn't be forgotten as well. And so we have a whole team working on that. And so it's it's a daunting challenge for sure, but I hadn't really thought about it in terms of paralleling my career. And I think I'm kind of trying to take my ego out of it. And I gave it a really good go for 20 years, and I'm so grateful for that. Wish I could keep going, but I can't. And applying a different, or exercising different muscles to make NASCAR as great as it can be.
Well, Julia, we're starting to wind this down. It's been awesome for sure. But one question I always like to ask in the podcast that I've been involved with and with Xander is, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want you to think about this. But when you get up tomorrow morning, tell me how you feel karting has affected your life, your day-to-day life, your future, how you go about yourself.
So I will say that I think go-karting is the most fun I've ever had in motorsports. Everything happens so quickly. Like, that's the biggest thing. You get to cars and like you have long straightaways, the turns are longer, like everything's so fast in a go-kart. And I'll forever be grateful that like little 10-year-old Julia discovered something she really loved to do, that she wanted to work really hard at to master. And that she wanted to, like, the fact that you learn, and this is something I tell people all the time, like in racing, Jeff Gordon, one of the best NASCAR drivers of all time, has an 11.5% win rate. Like, the very best wins roughly 10% of the time. Like, you will get so good at losing and failing and rebounding and figuring out how you can change, figuring out how you can do better the next time. And you're hungry for that. And that mentality, I don't think, is something that's particularly widespread among people in general. And so to have been able to have spent my formative years in that kind of environment that then set me up for how I approach life at this point is pretty damn special. I mean, like, that's a luxury to be able to have been given that level of responsibility with that level of reward when you do it properly and luck is on your side. And I think that's something that all racers should be really grateful for, because you can't get that in a lot of other spaces. Like, I'm sure you can on some level. I'm sure there are other sports for sure, but the combination of machine and technology and athleticism and mental strength and the teamwork and collaboration and communication that all happens at the same time as a car is like changing throughout a race, like, it is so intense. And so it's just really special to have been able to do that for so long.
And for my last, hold on, Ray. I'll give my last one on that, because I want to go on one other angle while we have you, because you have such a cool story of making it and racing it in so many different disciplines as a woman in a male dominated sport. So for mine, I don't want to forget this, because I know that we will, because we have gone so many cool directions.
You're good.
So many cool directions tonight. But for you mentioned about obviously earning respect out there, right? Like, when we have such a cool wave, like you said, of girls in motorsport, more and more and more, but still, right? No boy wants to get beat by a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so for any of the girls that are listening in or watching, what would be the advice you have of like how you would say, I don't know, how to tackle it, or like how to approach it, probably knowing, almost like kind of assuming maybe, I guess, when you put the helmet on, that, all right, like, it's not going to be 100% neutral yet, and I've got to find a way to get them to respect me back, you know?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question. I haven't been asked that question in a long time. So there's a couple things. I think one, you're not there to make friends with people. That is not our objective being at the racetrack, which I literally had a former professional racer whose son was racing with me told me that I wouldn't make friends by being that aggressive at South Bend, Indiana, actually, after I had beat his son. And that I think the best way to earn respect is to race really hard, but to race really clean. And the more that you can be like right wheel to wheel, that you can make the great passes, that you can keep it clean, there's nothing cooler. And it is, you don't have to be like, you don't have to rub it in faces, but it's really cool to beat the boys, especially when they don't want you to. So you should run with that to all my ladies listening or watching. Because that's how you earn respect. Winning earns respect, and people want to be with winners. And even if boys don't want to get beat by the girls don't want to get beat by boys either. Like when you're going to the racetrack, everyone wants to win, and you find your style. You find, I always leaned into humor. I always leaned into trying to be as graceful as possible. But yeah, I mean, go for it. You don't want to look back and regret not having given it your all because some boys didn't think you were nice.
One of the things I wanted to say was, please tell your mom and dad and your family I said hello. They were always so nice to me at the track, and I always admired you because I knew the challenges you had, and some of them, it's part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
But you always took them head on, and you were a great competitor. And this is I'll tell you, Xander, we hit a home run here. This has been really great to spend this time with Julia.
Yeah, super cool. I like what Randy said. I appreciate the time. I think it's just like already with a couple of guests that we've had so far with the show. I wish we had even more time to be able to talk to you. But at the same point, I think that's such a cool problem to have, that you've got still so much going on, that racing's given you so much that you've got a busy schedule, and I too hugely appreciative for you being able to come on here and talk about it, because it's cool. It's I'm sure really cool for all the girls that we have, and the more and more of them strapping helmets on and going out there, and you look at the sport now. I guess for you, is there a feeling of pride too, like you said, that you were kind of on the early-ish of this wave of women now?
Yeah, and thank you both for having me. This is such a fun trip down memory lane, and also fantastic questions. Like, these are really thoughtful questions, so thank you. And I think also, when I was, especially in like 2014, 15, 16, when I was starting to come up in the stock cars, there were still just so many teams that hadn't really worked with a woman, or hadn't seen a woman racer, or like hadn't interfaced. So like, people have their preconceived notions of what women would be like. And so I'm really grateful for people like me and Joanna Long and Kenzie Rustin, and like all these folks that kind of showed that it can be really cool to work with a woman. And this is not like, and again, it's like you can only view the world through your own lens, and you make your decisions through your own experiences, and no two people have the same experience. So the lens with which we view the world is very unique. And so knowing I could add some color to that lens that may impact how people, whether it's spotters or team owners or, anyone like that, how they interact with people, or maybe like don't make assumptions about people that are different from you. Like, knowing there might have been some little bit of that is really cool. And as you get older, you just want to start leaving an impact on the world. And so I appreciate the platform to tell these stories. Thank you for asking great questions. And hope everyone who's listening is excited to go after whatever it is that their goals are.
Very nice.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up. Julie, again, thanks for joining us, and thanks for making the time. And believe it or not, this is actually we are batting 1,000 right now with Randy hooking up his headset that I sent him, and his mixer to his laptop, and his webcam.
First time.
Everything's working.
Without any guidance. He hasn't had to call me. He's got it all down.
I'm so proud of you. Good job.
It took some time, Julie. Okay, this is the first time I didn't even know. I had to do the phone thing where I show it to Xander, and it's like, okay, What do you think, Xander? Well, there's a couple things that aren't plugged in yet. That could be part of the problem. You know?
Well, you look like a pro, so wouldn't
Yeah.
have thought
Okay.
twice
Oh, great. Good
about it.
answer. Good answer.